Harpy Boo is a Chicago electronic footwork producer who is on the Planet Mu or Planet Mu Records label. I caught onto the guy a few years back. Music was pretty good. I mostly know this genre through the artist DJ Rashad. I know it's been quite a micro movement in Chicago over the past 5-6 years. It's certainly been rising quite well. I thought it was going to blow up in a bigger way than it did, but unfortunately it hasn't. I always expected a mainstream artist to take this sound to the next level and elevate it to the greater heights that it possibly could get to, but it hasn't quite happened yet. I guess there are some influences in hip hop, especially with beats, but you know, generally this is quite a niche sound that hasn't crossed over just yet. Now, DJ Rashad's Double Cup is always an album that I compare artists in this sound to, because that is such a great album and probably one of the better ones we'll ever get out of the genre, in my opinion anyway. I know there are artists like Jalin who put out an album in 2015 that had footwork elements. Her last album, which I really liked, also had footwork elements, but it's not quite in that same field as what traditional sounding footwork may sound like. And I think this new album from RP Boo, I'll Tell You What, certainly is an album that also exits that footwork sound as well. I think this album experiments with some different ideas. Some of the beats are a little bit stretched out and have more components to them. The samples, the vocal samples, are used in quite a strange and off-kilter type way that was a little hard to get used to at first, but as time goes on I think you do kind of pick up what is going on with this album. I do mostly like what I'm hearing on this album. I do think there are some very clever and creative ideas going across this album. I just think for the most part the longevity of this album for me just doesn't really stick. Like by the end of the album I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm done with this. I don't know if I want to return to it, and I was only really returning to it to see if it would grow, and it just hasn't quite done that. I do really like the more testing type beats on this album. I mean, the opening track, No Body, doesn't exactly set a tone. I mean, it's certainly not your average type of song in this sound. Typically, you know, Footwork goes speedy, it goes in at your face, the vocal samples are wild and abrasive, but I don't think this opening track sets that tone at all, and it was really interesting to hear something slightly different. RP Boo could certainly be like a legend eventually in this style of music, mostly because of how he's pushing outside of the original sounds. He's not really sticking at a prototype, he's really going in at this from a very different angle, throwing in elements that perhaps haven't been used before. We hear Toro y Moi on one of the songs. The Flying High song from Travis Scott's Rodeo is what is sampled here, the chorus, and it's a really eerie way to throw in his vocals. Like, it's such a nice moment, but it's also quite like spacious sounding. It's very much on its own. It's left there in a strange way, but then the beat comes in and it's really cool. I just like how his ideas are kind of just scattered all over the place on this album. And then the track immediately after is an absolute fucking rave. You Belong to Me, which is absolutely crazy. It's absolutely just speedy as hell. It's honestly something that if you were high on drugs in a club, you would just be dancing and bouncing all over the fucking place. Not that I condone that kind of behaviour. If you want to get high, I suppose, but you know, it's not something I would do. But if you were, you were in a club and this came on, yeah man, you would be sweating. You would be sweating. I guess this is the most Footwork sounding song on the whole thing, though. This is certainly more in the realms of that genre, and certainly something more I expected of RP Boo on this album. But I like how I ended up coming out of this album getting something that I wasn't expecting. That's really quite cool to me. Can't really say I like the Wicked Boo track though, the sort of synth in the background and the vocals. It just feels like I'm in like a space museum and there's someone speaking over like a microphone and telling us like what's going on, sort of like a public service broadcasting or something like that. That if anyone's never checked out that artist, really go and check them out because that's really cool. But the tone of the sample just sounds like that, and I just don't think it works. It's not like they're telling a story or anything. It's just chopped and a bit weird, and it doesn't work. I love the closing track though, Deep Soul. I love the vocalist that's being used here, baby. And it's really just RP Boo doing what he does well. You know, it's a soul sample. It's a great vocalist being thrown in. It's chopped and just screwed and just pounding with the beat. It's everything that you want from RP Boo, to be honest, and he just does it well at this point. Yeah, it's a solid album overall, I've got to admit. It's not something I feel like I'd fully return to, which is why my score might not reflect the quality here, but I do have to take into account the personal taste, because I must admit there is really only one or two songs that I really love on this whole thing, despite the fact that I think it's very creative and unique. I'm gonna go 6 out of 10. Like, don't be put off by a 6 out of 10 though. 6 out of 10 is positive. This is good. It just, as a whole project, it's not something I feel like I could return to like regularly at all. But the standout tracks, certainly tracks that I could play any time and get a hell of a lot of enjoyment out. So yeah, do go check this out. And yeah, please go check this album out. Check out his old stuff too. It's there's some interesting work that he's put into his discography. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on this. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews. Hope you enjoyed this review. Have a good day. Have a good day.